And the role of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in particular, in its oversight of the State Department, can serve not just as a kind of source of advice, but also legislation. And I provide in my paper 10 or 11 examples of some really specific things that I believe are already being worked on. I certainly support Senator Gardner's effort at the Asian Reassurance Initiative. There's a parallel effort, as you know, with Chairman McCain over in the Armed Services Committee. I was pleased in Singapore in June to hear Secretary of Defense Jim Mattis endorse the McCain Initiative. It's not clear what the $300 or $400 million exactly would be spent for, but the intent is clear that our Asian allies and partners do not have shared situational awareness of what is going on in Asia. The Indians fairly recently were joking about, we want to make the Indian Ocean the Indian Ocean, by which they meant the purchase of several $billion worth of American P-8 aircraft, which have weapon systems in the back that can sink ships, frankly, and other improvements, including maritime situational awareness in a big new center in Delhi, where the Indians can keep track of both blue holes and gray holes going through the Indian Ocean. Chinese are very angry about this. They have criticized the Obama administration for its effort to, as they say, boost India to a higher rank order in comprehensive power than the Chinese believe India deserves. So I think it's a very good thing that Chairman Gardner mentioned the Indo-Pac region and this new concept, which we've now heard more than 50 times by members of the Trump administration, including the president himself on his trip, a free and open Indo-Pacific region. The Chinese have already attacked this. They don't like it. It's probably an example of what Senator Baucus mentioned, standing up to China. Because frankly, there's quite a long list of Chinese initiatives to which the United States has not responded. One of them is the Belt and Road Initiative that Senator Markey mentioned. I completely agree with him that they're offering low-interest loans to countries that can't afford it. We're already faced with the example of Sri Lanka, which fell behind in its payments, and then was the subject of coercion that if you transfer the main port here in Sri Lanka to Chinese control, we'll forgive the debt. The Sri Lankans did it. The similar operation has occurred recently with the, assuming the control, financially at least, of the main port of Greece, Piraeus, and then asking the Greeks to interfere and block European Union human rights action. So we're beginning to see just through the media what the Belt and Road Initiative may mean. However, the only statesman in the world who stood up to it yet is Prime Minister Modi, who he and his team have been quite outspoken, partly because the Belt and Road Initiative includes violation of Indian sovereign claims. But the United States government up till now, and this is a 5-year-old initiative if you count the early part of it, has been silent. We sent our National Security Council staff senior director for East Asia to the Belt and Road Summit, who said something positive about American companies, but he neither opposed nor supported the Belt and Road Initiative. There are several others. One is the new model of great power relations that in many ways anticipates Professor Allison's excellent book. The new model of great power relations has been proposed by President Xi. He's described it as a personal signature initiative. A gentleman named Wang Huning, who's now on the Standing Committee of the Politburo, is the scholar allegedly who thought it up. We've had no answer to it. Susan Rice, John Kerry, President Obama, all three have said we should explore it or try to see what it means, but have not endorsed it. Neither did President Trump on this trip. Frankly, if you ask the Chinese, and I agree with Senator Baucus about how energetic they are, if you say, what is the new model of great power relations? They say, well, it replaces the old model. And what is the old model? Well, it's the main theme of Graham Allison's Destined for War. In the old model, the rising power either starts a war with the hegemon or the hegemon starts a war with the rising power. So you would think, who could be against the new model? But then it turns out the new model doesn't explain who a great power is, whether India, the European Union or Japan qualify, or it's just a G2 bilateral arrangement. It doesn't explain whether the use of force would ever be justified by the United States. It sounds in some ways as if the new model of great power relations, if we would agree to it, is saying we will not come to the defense of any ally in the region against China. So the Senate has yet to speak on those two Chinese initiatives, and there are several others. One is the Asia for the Asians concept, where our embassy asked to be at least an observer down in Shanghai to go to this confidence building conference. And we were told, no, you can be an observer, but when we say Asia for the Asians, we don't include the United States. There's another vague concept, what I personally love, called the community of common destiny. This was repeated several times in President Xi's 3.5-hour speech. No one quite knows what the community of common destiny is, but Senator Baucus mentioned the old tribute system, and there's some reason to believe that that is really what it is. It's reactivating common destiny led by China. And that lets me mention my agreement with Professor Allison and Lee Guan Yu. Your first set of 4 or 5 questions for the hearing asked about Chinese intentions, and there's really no better answer than what Lee Guan Yu gave. I see if I can get the exact quote here. It is China's intention to be the greatest power in the world. Now, we used to take that with complacency because of what was called the China collapse theory, that they're going to fall apart. They have no chance to be the greatest power in the world. That book came out, The Coming Collapse of China, in 2002. 15 years later, China's GDP has not only doubled, it's almost tripled. So the China collapse theory, which Graham Allison essentially attacks in his book, and I attack in my book, essentially is no longer credible in my view. They have problems, but they know what to do about those problems.